A few years ago, I was in a place where I felt lost, alone, and just meh about my life. I embarked on a journey to understand myself and I found meditation. It was a topsy turvy journey from small retreats to eventually finding a program that resonated with me. By far, for me, one of the biggest impacts and shifts in my life has been due to learning about meditation and cultivating a regular and consistent practice. It's really changed my life. One of those influences in my life has been Davidji. He was our meditation teacher when we went on the Masters of Wisdom program, where we learned, grew, and evolved. So, who's Davidji? Davidji has taught millions of people around the world to heal their hearts, plant powerful intentions, and manifest their dream lives. His grasp of time-tested solutions combined with real-world practical applications have helped people at every stage of life and circumstances to find balance, heal deep wounds, and transform into their best versions. Davidji is recognized as a global mind-body health and wellness practitioner, a mindful performance trainer, meditation teacher, and author of a number of award-winning books. I actually have some of these books right next to me. So anyone who's watching this, we've got this book, which is De-Stressifying. And we have Secrets of Meditation. Davidji has also written other books. These are the two I have on my bookshelf currently. Often referred to as the velvet voice of stillness, Davidji is the most prolific creator of guided meditation. He can be heard on more than 1,000 guided meditations. I often listen to you on Insight Timer, Davidji, and it just it connects me to our journey when we were learning from you, and it just gives me that sense of calm and purpose and well-being. So I am so delighted to have Davidji on my podcast today, and thank you for being here.
Thank you for inviting me, Monica. What a great honor to be on your podcast. So excited. I wish you well. I'm so grateful that you're able to be out here sharing your wisdom and your stories with all your listeners from around the world. And thanks for including me.
Wonderful. And so we're in completely different parts of the world right now. So where are you right now?
I like to refer to where I am as the sweet spot of the universe. I'm in Carlsbad, California, Southern California. I'm about 40 miles north of Mexico. I'm about 100 miles south of LA. I'm about 5 miles from the Pacific Ocean on the west coast of the US. And I'm about 3,000 miles from New York. So I feel good about all those distances, but I think I'm like 10,000 miles away from you right now.
Absolutely. I love seeing the daylight and the greenery in the background as well. So as you know, I'm in the UAE in Abu Dhabi right now, and it's the evening. So the weather's getting hot now. So the summer months are approaching. So that's something we need to prepare ourselves for. But thank you so
Yeah.
much for being here. Um, Davidji, where did this inspiration to learn about meditation and then teach meditation come from?
Well, I started meditating when I was in college. It was an experimental Asian studies course. There were 12 of us. We sat in a circle. Our Zen master stood in the corner. We were instructed to raise our hands when we had a thought during meditation. In his hands, he carried an 18-inch bamboo stick known as a keisaku. And so when we raised our hands, because we had a thought, he would come over and thwack us on the back. So I only lasted in that particular, that was Zen meditation. I only lasted in that particular school of meditation for a couple of weeks. I ended up dropping that class because I didn't want to get hit. But I loved the calm that I seem to experience from meditating. And so I left that, started doing stuff like candle gazing, and then I heard about mantra and explored that for a while, and tantra, and then chocolate tasting meditation, still one of my favorites. And I actually cultivated a practice on and off. I was like most people, a crisis meditator, on and off and on and off and on and off. You know, the crisis comes and suddenly you're meditating for like 3 days, and the crisis goes away and you stop meditating. So I was doing that for a bunch of years. And as I got more involved in the corporate world, I noticed that my meditation was slipping away a little bit more and a little bit more and a little bit more until it was gone. And at that point, when I realized that my meditation practice was gone, I also realized that balance was gone from my life. And so had one of these pre-midlife crises, which wasn't in midlife, but it was pre-midlife, where I was just searching for answers. And am I working in the right job? Am I in the right place? Is my heart, where it should be, and all that stuff. So I went on my own little eat, pray, love journey of sorts, which brought me ultimately to India, where I was in search of the guru. Um, I was hoping to see His Holiness the Dalai Lama. He wasn't there that day. I had a 6-month visa in India, and I searched high and low. I was meditating every day. I was practicing yoga. I was bathing in the Ganges. I was going to the temples and praying. I was doing like all this stuff in hopes of finding the meaning, my meaning of life. And I was actually laying in a hammock in a cashew forest in Kerala in southern India, reading this ancient book, the Bhagavad Gita. And I suddenly I must have read it, this one verse. There's 700 verses in the Bhagavad Gita, but I must have read this one verse hundreds of times. But when I read it this time, it's conversations with God. It's Arjuna, the great warrior, talking to God. It's the original conversations with God. This is about 300 BC, so about 1,000 years before Muhammad. Um, you know, 2,300 years ago, 300 years before Christ. And this original conversations with God, and Arjuna, the great warrior, is talking to God, and he says, how am I supposed to live my life? How am I supposed to walk through the world when I find myself at a fork in the road, or I find myself at a crossroads? And God replies to him, Yogasta Kuru Karmani, which that's a Sanskrit phrase, and it means establish yourself in the present moment and then perform action. And that just hit me like a bolt of lightning. Like, yeah, that's what it is. If I can get to a place where I'm not reactive, where I'm not making decisions out of fear or desperation, where I could just get a little bit calm, that's yoga sta, balanced, present, then I'll make the best decision, or a better decision than I might have. Then I'll say the better words than I might have. And that's how I want to live my life. I want to take a breath before I take a step anywhere. And then I can step boldly into any direction, into the unknown. But by cultivating that space between, I'll be a better expression of myself. So after I left India, I, got certified to teach meditation. And I began teaching it in a lot of different places in the corporate world. Started off, one of my first gigs was teaching at Pepsi. But I live in Southern California, so there's a lot of cooped out people. I'm originally from New York, but I live in Southern California. So where I live, everyone's doing yoga, everyone's into energy and dolphins and mermaids and angel cards and Reiki, like all sorts of stuff. And so I started teaching a lot of those people as well. And I really started cultivating, how can I, you know, how can I just take my practice to the next level? And I figured if I can just keep teaching people or be a teacher, then my own practice is going to keep getting leveled up. And at the same time, I'll be able to experience different kind of people, different needs, different challenges in people's meditation practice, but also different challenges in life. And at a certain point, I launched the Davidji Meditation Academy, started training people to teach others and share these teachings with others because I like the original source material. Because people have been doing this in Africa, in Asia, in the Middle East, in the indigenous North American and South American countries for thousands and thousands of years. So if I could just figure out, more modern, practical ways to share this with others and share that with people to share that with others, then suddenly the ripple takes hold. And so that's how we met. You suddenly found that spark inside of you that's like, I want to take my practice to the next level. And I'm finding the spark to share this with others as well. So if we can weave it into everything we do, then our words, our actions, our thoughts are going to come from a higher place. So that's sort of my journey to this moment.
Beautiful. You talked about this present moment, living based on the Bhagavad Gita and the verse that you read, and then cultivating a practice as well. So many people I meet along the way in like in the corporate world, and also if I'm having a random conversation about meditation, people say it's so hard. Like, how is it even possible to do this? So what would you want to say to them?
Well, I think everyone can find their way of meditating to at least start the practice. I think a lot of people, the number one response everyone has is, you don't understand. I have too many thoughts. And even when I close my eyes to meditate, I still have thoughts. And so that's like yeah, we all have thoughts. We have like 60,000 thoughts a day. Everyone does. So we're not trying to stop thoughts. We're just settling ourselves down. The Patanjali, the great yogic sage, 2,000 years ago said, what is oneness? What is this concept of oneness? It's the progressive quieting of the fluctuations of the mind. That's it. That's all it is. If we can progressively quiet our minds just a little bit and then cultivate that and then practice that and then do that more consistently, ultimately, when there's less noise in our head, we can hear the whispers in our hearts. And I think that's the solution. That's the answer. There's just so much noise outside of us, and then there's so much noise inside of us. So all we're doing is just quieting it a bit. And as we show up every single day, just like brushing our teeth, if you brushed your teeth once, you might say, wait, I still got a cavity a month later. Like, okay, well, if you keep eating chocolate every day and you only brush once a month, yeah, you're probably going to get cavities. Or if you brush really a lot the night before you go to the dentist, but you don't brush any other time, it's not really going to do a lot for your teeth. But if you show up every day and just do a little, a little, a little, a little, bean by bean, the bag gets full and this thing becomes you. And so at this stage of my life, because I've been practicing consistently every single day, twice a day, at least, once in the morning and once in the afternoon, it's become a little more a part of every decision that I make. And I find that I make better decisions now than I did 10 years ago. Just because I have this thing that just creates a little bit of space before I make a move.
Wonderful. So that consistency is so important. And I remember when you were teaching us, and you had a couple of different models for people to create a habit around meditation. So I remember RPM and Raw. Do you want to talk about that a little bit so we can give some techniques to our audience?
Yeah, I think this is really like an important component of this. This is a really, really important component. First of all, as you said, it's about consistency, not duration. So we don't have to suddenly block an hour every time we sit down to meditate. We can, in any moment, even if we just closed our eyes and just took a breath, one breath. So there's two concepts. There's the in the moment breath hacks. such as just taking a breath when someone pushes our button, or when suddenly we find ourselves just overwhelmed, or just in a place where we're feeling triggered. And then there's the proactive stuff. Now, I believe that this is my belief. I believe that meditation, we can't really cultivate that practice through willpower. We have to cultivate it through ritual. So if we can create a morning ritual, and we do a whole bunch of rituals in the morning. We wake up, we pee, we poop, we shower, we groom, we make a meal, we make our coffee or tea, we, walk our dogs or feed our dogs or dress our kids or do something out there. We do all those things. We brush our teeth, like all that stuff. We shower, all that stuff, pretty much in the same flow. And we don't think about it. You don't know what time you brush your teeth. You do it after this thing and usually before that thing. And so, same kind of thing. If we can push meditation to the very, very front of that morning ablution ritual, then, and I've worked with a lot of people who, pray 5 times a day. And it's like, yeah, but first I get still before I pray. So they've even woven their meditation into their prayer practice. And so if we can RPM, rise, P, meditate. I used to just rise and meditate, but I'd be sitting in meditation saying, I have to pee. And so instead of that, now I really have like a much easier path. But there's a lot of people who said, oh no, once I get up, it's over. I start doing all this other stuff. So I've added to my morning ritual as an option for those who don't want to RPM, rise, P, meditate, meditation. And everyone's got a phone, pretty much. And so if you set an alarm in the morning, as soon as the alarm goes off, you just tap your snooze button, slide your tush up to the headboard, keep your eyes closed, meditate, either watching your breath or using a gratitude practice or whatever technique you feel might be good, or listening to a guided meditation. And then when your snooze button goes off, you've got like 10 minutes of stillness and silence. So there's no excuse now. Either stay in bed and meditate or rise, pee, and meditate. And so that at least helps to ritualize it. Maybe the first 2 or 3 or 4 times, people be like, oh, my dog wanted to go out, or this, but no. If you're going to let your dog rule your life like I do, at least train your dog to meditate with you first thing in the morning. Then they can go out, then they can get fed and all that other stuff. And then they'll meditate with you. So I think if we can ritualize that, that's like the perfect trajectory. Then you start your day with just a little bit of stillness and silence inside of you, instead of instantly getting online, instantly going on social media, instantly checking emails, instantly doing all that other stuff, because we're in activity every other moment of the day, every single moment of the day. And yet here's an opportunity for us to suddenly greet things just a little more calmly. The second meditation of the day that I recommend, somewhere between noon and 6 p.m., or really somewhere between noon and dinner time. If you can just spend 5 minutes, and my recommendation is to do the let go meditation, because you wake up and you've absorbed all the stuff. You've absorbed all the conversations in your head. You've absorbed all the issues of your life. You've absorbed all this stuff. And then you burn through the day and you bring it into dinner time and you bring it into post dinner time. And then you bring it into bedtime and you bring it into sleep time and you bring it into dream time. We don't spend any time letting go. So if we can just spend 5 minutes with our eyes closed, somewhere between noon and dinner, where we just silently, as we breathe in, we say let, and silently as we breathe out, we say go. Let go. And we just do that for 5 minutes. Doesn't matter what comes into your head. That horrible trauma, let go. That funny situation, let go. That social media post, let go. Whatever it is, let go. And we're sort of just like clearing our minds and releasing. Think of all the energy and stuff that we absorb on a daily basis, and we've never had a let go practice. So we're just taking in, we're never releasing. So those two things, I call them the bookend. So my acronym for the afternoon meditation is RAW, right after work. But if you feel you want to do it at 2 o'clock, rock on, do that. So I think there's always a time for us to have our bookends. Maybe 10 minutes in the morning to start your day, 5 minutes in the afternoon to just let go. I call it the first one of the day sets the table. The second one of the day washes the dishes. We would never confuse those two things. They're totally different. So if we can bring the intention of let me set my course for the day, like typing in an address into your GPS, and hopefully I move in that direction. And maybe today I'm going to be a little more patient. Maybe today I'm going to be a little kinder to myself. Maybe today I'm going to be a little more forgiving. Maybe today I'll be, a little calmer. And then that second one of the day, let me just let go of everything I've just taken in. I think those two things really healing and really allowing us to show up as our better version or our best version. So I would say if you don't have a practice, why not start there? And if it's like, oh, it's too much for me to start, okay. Well, then how about every time you feel triggered, you take a deep breath in and let it go. And just because no one breathes enough. There's two things I know to be true. No one on this planet, 8 billion people, no one breathes enough because we're holding our breath all the time, especially while we're scrolling. And no one allows themselves to receive enough love. So that'll be another conversation that we can have on your podcast. But for the first part of this, we can just be a little calmer, be a little kinder to ourselves and others. And we can do that simply by watching our breath, simply by having a small toe in the water of our meditation practice.
And our breath is so important, like it's a sign of us having life. And I don't think we don't realize how powerful it is and how important it is to our well-being. So that connection is key. And I think when people first start meditating, like following your breath becomes like it's a tool we have within us. We don't need to like think too much. So maybe today we can encourage people to start doing something around their breath and spending those few moments to focus on it.
Yeah, absolutely. And so, one of the techniques that I like to do, it's a really, really easy technique. So think about something that's been bothering you over the past couple of days, just irritating you. Don't go too deep. This isn't therapy, but someone said they were going to do something, they didn't, or something was supposed to happen a certain way. That's not how it unfolded. Something along those lines, and get clear on that. And now take a long, slow, deep breath in through your nose and watch that breath. And when it gets down to your belly, just hold it there and watch it. Just hold it and keep witnessing it. Keep holding it and observe that breath sitting in your belly. And now let that breath go and watch it as it moves up your chest, through your throat, out through your nose or mouth. Keep exhaling, keep watching it. Keep witnessing that breath as you continue to push it out and hold it out. Keep watching that. And now breathe normally and feel free to open your eyes. That was about 16 seconds. And in those 16 seconds, if you were playing along, you were not thinking about that thing that I just asked you to think about. So you are not in the past, you are not in the future, you are fully present, watching your breath as it moved in and out of you. So we learned three things from that. One, we learn pretty much you can direct your attention anywhere you want at any time, in any moment, no matter what. Number two, what we just did was introduce a pattern interrupt, a break in the action, sort of like giving our brain an opportunity to just take a break. And that allows us to suddenly not be in the past and thinking about all the stuff that happened, or be in the future and all the stuff that might happen, but probably won't, but might. Suddenly, the past and the future are pushed away and we are fully present. And there's science that when we can take a break in the action, our brain pulls apart those pieces of our brain that are always trying to connect. They pull apart a little bit and then they come back together, right? Think about like when you're watching a movie and suddenly there's this actor and you're like, oh, it's that guy. And then your mind is going blank. You're like, oh, it was that guy who was in that thing. You don't even remember the name of the movie that they were in. And suddenly someone says, hey, you want some popcorn? And you're like, yeah, I love popcorn. Thanks. Oh, George Clooney. And, suddenly, poof. And what happens is, our brain's pulling apart in that break and then comes back together so perfectly. So that's known as the pattern interrupt. And the third thing we learned from that 16 seconds is this concept of, it's a secret of meditation, known as the object of your attention. So as long as you have an object of attention, and the object, it could be your breath, it can be a mantra, it can be let go, it can be whatever that is. Then as we drift away to thought, which of course we're going to do, as we drift away to sounds, which yes, of course we're going to do, as we drift away to physical sensations, yes, of course we're going to, suddenly we have this object of attention that we can drift back to. And so one of the easiest ways is just watching your breath, watching it as it comes in, watching it goes out, or watching what our physical body does. We notice that when we breathe in, take a breath in, your belly fills, your chest rises up, and take a breath out, let that breath go, and your whole body eases and relaxes just a bit. So even just our attention on that can be the object of attention. And in that moment, everything shifts, everything can change. So if you've never meditated, you can breathe. You should do it a little bit more. And if you'd like to dabble or dip your toe in a little bit, meditation or rise, P, meditate, or that second one of the day, let go. Because everybody has 5 minutes. Even if you just go into the bathroom and sit down in a stall and just allow yourself to come. You could do that if you're having a tough time at work. You can do that even if, suddenly there's a difficult conversation. You can say, I have to go to the bathroom for a minute. No one's going to say, no, you don't. They're going to go, okay, but hurry back. You just go, your toilet seat can be your meditation cushion. So there's no excuse. All of us have access to a place or a moment in time where we could always effortlessly connect to that stillness and silence that rests within.
Beautiful. There are many studies of the way the brain transforms and how our bodies and our minds can be positively impacted by having a meditation practice. Can you share more around that in terms of what you've read and also maybe based on people you work with?
Well, there are so many studies, and probably it's really in the last 10 years. Before that, everyone was saying, this is good for you, or it was like only a spiritual thing. So that didn't require any evidence. It was just a faith-based kind of thing. This will be good for you. This will bring you closer to God, which I think is great. Right? A lot of people say, oh, meditation might get in the way between me and God. Like, no. Typically, your conversation with God is asking for stuff. Meditation is listening. Brings you even closer to God. But there's actually a science behind this too. And probably the leader in this is Harvard Medical Center, particularly this one researcher, Dr. Sarah Lazar. And she has done so many studies, starting, I think, the first one that I really became aware of most was in 2015, but there was a landmark study that she did in 2018. Really powerful study. So we're talking, just 6 years ago. And it was the first study where they used MRI, magnetic resonance imagery, to really see like, well, what actually happens to the brain when people meditate over a specific period of time. So she had these test subjects meditate for 30 minutes, just watching their breath, obviously having thoughts, obviously drifting away, obviously thinking about stupid stuff like, do I need to buy 3 apples or two? Or did I respond to that email, or did I pay that bill, or I can't believe I had that conversation. There wasn't a questionnaire of like, what's the quality of your thoughts during your practice? But they just watch their breath come in and out, drifting away, and then come back for 30 minutes a day, once a day. I hesitate to even share this story because I always recommend it 2 times a day. But this study was 30 minutes a day, once a day for 56 days, 8 weeks. And, there's an interesting thing that they've proven over time is that when we're 25, that's when our brain peaks. I know it's for any of you 25 or under, rock on. For all of us 25 and older, our brain has been thinning out. The gray matter that covers all the various parts of our brain has been thinning every single day since we were 25. So by the time you hit like 35 or 45 or 55, your brain gray matter has gotten really, really thin, which is why people have those quote senior moments, which is why as you get older, you forget your keys and lose your phone a lot more than you used to when you were 18. Um, Although we didn't have phones when I was 18. So, at least portable phones. So we suddenly start to realize that we're not at peak brain right now. We were at peak brain when we were 25. So since we know that the gray matter of your hippocampus, which is the part of the brain responsible for learning, memory, and spatial orientation, like hand-eye coordination, balance, stuff like that, that's been thinning every single moment since you were 25. So Sarah Lazar took these test subjects, had them meditate for 56 days, just simply watching their breath, did MRIs on their brain before, during, and after the study. And what she found, and this is unbelievable, this is the first study that proved that meditation can change the physical structure of our brain. Since we know that we're supposed to be having our brain shrinking, but in all of the test subjects, it was unanimous. All of them experienced an increase of more than 5% in the gray matter of their hippocampus. So imagine this. This was this kind of thing where suddenly, like out of nowhere, out of the blue, we've proven that in under 2 months, in just 56 days of meditating every day, we can actually bring our brains back to peak form. We can have the brain of a 25-year-old if we meditate. If we meditate. And so all I can say is wow, wow, wow. Those were Steve Jobs' last 3 words. So suddenly we realized then she reached out to these people afterwards and, in a follow-up and said, well, we just want to make sure that all the data is correct. You were meditating for 30 minutes a day. And then they all sheepishly said, well, actually, no, we were all meditating less than 30 minutes a day. Turned out they were meditating for an average of 22 minutes a day. So these are the results that they experience with simply 22 minutes a day of meditation. So there's been so many other studies similar to this that have proven different parts of our brain, get healed or whole or return to like these really magnificent spaces. But I have to say, that's like when I read that study for the first time, that was like a mic drop line for me. And so we know it works. We know scientifically, evidence-based, this practice actually works. And so I say to everyone, out there, just try it. Just try it. Check it out. And the science is there. The fun part of it is there. So why not, take a step into that realm, just a little bit.
No, I completely agree. There are different kinds of people. There's the science, those who believe in science, and those who maybe have more of an open mind. Yet science is caught up with this whole belief in meditation, this ancient wisdom. so that now there is evidence, there are studies, and there's a direct correlation. So, and I think that gives those people who maybe didn't believe before, almost like the permission to delve into it if they didn't believe in it before. So, and I think that's really, really powerful. The other thing I really wanted to touch upon today was around stress. And you've written this book, De-Stressifying, this one. For anyone out there who wants to buy it, I think it's available on various outlets. I don't know which ones, but I presume it's on Amazon and things like that, right? So um,
Yes. Yeah.
I was going to ask, why are we all so stressed? But I suppose what I really want to know is like, what what is stress as this thing? Like, what is it really? And then how do we overcome it?
Well, there are a lot of definitions of stress. Two that I'm pretty comfortable with is one, stress is how you respond when your needs are not met. So think of all the needs we have, the physiological needs, the needs of safety and security, and all the different aspects of our life and our relationships, the needs of love and belongingness. Um, they need to be seen, they need to be validated, they need to be included, the need to have someone agree with our belief system, all those different needs. So when those needs are not being met, and that's probably happening 15 to 20 times a day, we're experiencing just little ripples of stress. Another definition of stress that I've really become comfortable with and really makes a lot of sense, it's when the demands of the moment are perceived by us as being greater than the resources that we think we have. So, if you're like really, really, really busy and you got a lot of stuff on your plate, and then someone says, "Hey, can you do me a favor and just pick me up?" Like in that moment, maybe 1,000 other times you would have thought nothing of, like, yeah, sure, I'll be there in 5 minutes. But because you have all this other stuff on your plate, you're perceiving that the demands of that moment are just too much. They're just overwhelming compared to the resources. It's like, I only have 15 minutes here and I only have 10 minutes there. And I don't really have this time. So suddenly, just a simple request can really suddenly put such a squeeze on us. And I think that for me, that's like a great understanding that stress is when the demands of the moment are perceived. They may not be, but we perceive them to be greater than the resources that we have at our disposal in that moment. And plus, there's a lot of emotional leakage. And this is why the let go second meditation of the day is so important. Because let's say you wake up and, you're driving with your coffee and then you hit a bump and you spill your coffee on your clothes and then it's on your legs and then it's in your car and sort of get a little frazzled and then someone texts you and then you get to work and suddenly it's like, can't believe I forgot to do that thing. Now I got to drive back home and, you're feeling very, then someone else says something to you that maybe makes you feel less than in some moment. And 5 hours later, someone could say, "Hey, I'm going to run out for coffee. Would you like me to pick something up for you?" And you're like, "No." And you're like actually like pissed off at them. And all they did was ask if they could do you a favor. But you're like, "No." And that's emotional leakage. It's like, well, the last thing I'm thinking about is coffee. I'm wearing my coffee and also this and that and this. And so that combination of the demands being perceived as too great than the resources we have, and just that emotional leakage that's creeping into us throughout the course of the day. And this is really why I think that those in the moment stress hacks of just like, let me take a breath here, let me release it, let me close my eyes. Obviously not when we're in traffic, but even if you're in traffic, if you're stuck in traffic, or it's taken longer than you wanted, how about just some long slow deep breaths in with some really nice releases out there. And so we have all the tools at if you can breathe, you can meditate. We have all the tools at our disposal. And there are so many different apps also that we can listen to. I've got, I don't know, 200 meditations on the Insight Timer. app. Um, on my website, I think there's another 500 meditations, and they're on Amazon and they're on Apple Music and Spotify and everywhere. So it's not just me, just one meditation teacher out of a planet filled with them like you. So I think, for all the people who are thinking, well, maybe I'll do that later. No, you should access whatever is the easiest access point for you to truly say, let me begin this. Let me start to do this. And I think that will make all the difference in the world. We will actually shift our lives from where we are to where we'd like to be, just through these simple practices.
Mm. And you've shared so many different tips today and practices, and obviously in your book and on your social media, people can like get more information from that as well. Um, you know, as human beings, like life is not always going to be like a smooth sailing path, right? We're going to face various obstacles. Life may throw things at us. It could be we lose a job or a relationship breakup, all the way through to maybe losing a loved one. Like, how important is it for us to acknowledge and own that pain to then help us move forward?
Why do we suffer in life? We suffer because we're resisting what is. All of our suffering is based on us wanting things to be better or different. And even having a great time, you're suddenly like, oh, but it's ending. It's like you and I could be like, but wait, our time together here is ending. And so we've gone from glee, and I'm so happy to be here with you. It's been so delightful, but to suddenly like, it'll be over soon. And we want it to last forever, but of course, nothing lasts forever. This concept of impermanence is essentially who we are. So what this life is. So where do we find all of our struggle? It's in the resistance. And so if your heart hurts, you should acknowledge that. If your heart hurts, you should be kind to yourself and allow yourself to have all these emotions, have all these thoughts. Feel your heart ache. Everybody's had their heart broken. The people who've said, what do you mean? I'm fine, aren't making themselves any better. They're just putting up a little shield, a little veneer. The people who walk around going, oh yeah, my heart was broken. That'll never happen again. Um, that's crazy. Who wants to be walking around blocking the world's kindness towards you? And so only by truly accepting the moment, accepting what is, allowing yourself to feel those emotions are real. So, can we lift ourselves up? Absolutely. I believe everyone needs to visit the land of hurt and wounds, but nobody needs to live there. So I think everybody's grieving period is a different time. Some people it takes days and weeks and months, and some people it takes years. But as long as we know that we're acknowledging the pain and not resisting the experience, then we'll heal. And what's healing? It's returning to the memory of our wholeness. So every one of us can be on this healing journey towards remembering the memory of our wholeness, even if we are broken right now. But it starts with you acknowledging, not being a victim, but owning everything that's happened to you right up to this moment. And then you get to choose. Do I want to make things better? Or do I want to wallow in my pain? And there's no right or wrong. You get to wallow. But if you find yourself wallowing and ruminating for too long, you're not really serving yourself or helping any aspect of yourself. So I believe that there's darkness in all of our lives, and we should spend time there, shining a light on it, and then it won't hold its grip on us. We will be the masters of each moment.
Mm. Like I say to myself that with acceptance comes freedom, because once we accept, we've given ourselves the permission to like be free, put the light on there, and then like heal. So I think that's really powerful. Um, so David G, do you want to share with our audience more about what you do, how they can get hold of you, and things like that?
Sure. Well, I would say for the past 20 years since I was laying in that hammock in that cashew forest many years ago, um, I have been on a journey of my own healing. Um, and it was through connecting to stillness and silence. So I've dedicated myself to helping other people connect to that stillness and silence that rests within them so they can make better choices in their life and live a more fulfilling and a more actualized life and live a life of joy and not a life of suffering. So I've created a whole bunch of different pathways to do that, from the simplest, sharing these techniques that I've shared with you today, to creating guided meditations, which people can access anywhere. But you can visit me at davidji.com, and have access to a whole bunch of different tools and resources to do that. I teach classes, I do retreats, heart healing, setting your course, manifesting, which I think, all these things have a meditation component in them. And I've been dedicated to training and certifying meditation teachers, which I've been doing really since 2003. Um, I apprenticed under Deepak Chopra for about 10 years. So that gave me some really powerful training there. And I've been doing that in so many different ways. And I even got the chance to do it in Dubai, um, where everyone was mostly doing yoga at the Dubai X uh, Yoga Festival. But I was teaching people to close their eyes and connect. It was something so special where I had everyone, I don't know, there were a lot of people in the audience at that event, or I guess X Dubai. And so and like the Minister of Health was there of I'm thinking so fondly because you and I had such a great time together when I was in the UAE. But I had guided people into this state of calm. We were getting softer and softer and softer. And then suddenly you heard the imam start to pray. And it was just like all these people in like this totally blissed out state. And then suddenly, the chants were like coming out like of the city and just like radiating over us, washing into the water. It was just one of the most beautiful experiences of my entire life. Um, anyway, yes. So once in a while, I also travel around and teach people to connect. But that was like the greatest convergence that could ever happen. That was like the Allah, Dhikr meditation. It was just perfect in every way. But yeah, just if you look for me, you'll find me. So I'm pretty much everywhere.
Wonderful. It's been like a pleasure to have you here on the You Got This podcast. For me, it's really special because, we have our fond memories. We've been on this transformation journey with you. We spent time with you in the States and also in the UAE. So my heart is also very warmed by our experience and for your support, for being here with me today as well, and our audience. Um, Before we say goodbye, what one piece of advice would you want to give our listeners as a reminder that they can overcome?
Well, there's a lot of crazy stuff going on our planet, but there's always been a lot of crazy stuff going on our planet. Since there's been humans, there's been stuff going on, and I'm sure before that. So a lot of times we're always pointing at this thing outside of us and either complaining about it or trying to fix it. And it doesn't mean it's not real. Doesn't mean it's not, tragic, or that it doesn't need fixing. It does. But I believe that we transform the world by transforming ourselves. I believe that if we're really looking to shift stuff outside of us, we need to shift the stuff inside of us. And so that can happen slowly and incrementally over time. And I think we need to think globally, but act locally. How local? Your own heart. I would start at the level of your heart. And as you can start to make those shifts and make those changes and make those types of transformations inside of you. For example, if you're struggling in a relationship with someone, before you go and demand an apology or apologize to that person, spend some time making peace with that whole thing inside of yourself, in your own heart. And then that'll be a more authentic expression in that interaction, whatever that does look like. So I think that's the most important thing that I can share. It's an inside job, and it just requires that we're willing to take the time and sit with ourselves. And so I invite everyone to take the time and sit with yourself just for a little bit, a couple of times a day. And over time, that'll grow into something beautiful.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. Before we wrap up today's session, I'd love for you to share these words by Lao Tzu that always resonate with me whenever you say them.
Yeah, well, Lao Tzu, the great Chinese philosopher, some say he lived 5,000 years ago, around the time of Confucius, actually. He had these beautiful words. Do you have the patience to wait until your mud settles and the water is clear? And it's followed up by a second line. Can you remain unmoving till the right action arises by itself? And that doesn't mean don't do anything. It means get still. And then when suddenly the world unfolds in a certain way, you'll be in the perfect position to make something happen. And I'd like to follow it up with a teaching by the great Bruce Lee, who's you could raise your hand out there if you're at a crossroads or about to make a decision or struggling with something in your life. Bruce Lee, when he was talking about water, he was like, do not be assertive, but adjust to the object, and you shall find a way around or through it. If nothing within you stays rigid, outward things will disclose themselves. So I think Lao Tzu and Bruce Lee together, just listening to those two teaching, that's how we can live a life of greater grace and greater ease.
Love it. What a way to end today's podcast episode with you, Davidji. Thank you so, so much. It's been, for me, amazing. So thank you.
It's been amazing for me too. And thank you again for inviting me. Thank you for sharing your audience with the world, and with me. And thanks for getting behind the mic and making stuff happen, Monica. So great to see you really in this beautiful expression of your heart.
Thank you. Thanks for listening, everyone. See you next time.